The night air was thick with the smell of smoke, the city trembling under chaos as Lena Carter stumbled forward, clutching her chest where fear pressed like iron. The streets, once alive with laughter, now echoed with screams that clawed at the silence. Shadows stretched across broken glass, and she whispered to herself, "If I stop now, I will never rise again." Her voice cracked, swallowed by the roar of collapsing buildings. Ethan Park appeared from the haze, his voice sharp and urgent as he said, "You cannot fight what you fear if you refuse to face it." She looked at him, her breath shallow, anger and despair twisting together. "Everything is falling apart, Ethan. They want me crushed. Maybe I was never strong enough." His expression hardened, his tone almost cruel yet steady. "Strength is not in avoiding the storm, Lena. It is in standing when your legs shake." She forced her trembling hands into fists, feeling her nails dig into her skin, each sting pulling her further from surrender. Around her the chaos swelled, but within, a faint ember flickered. Lena raised her eyes to the burning skyline and whispered, "Then let the storm come. I am still here." Morning broke heavy and gray, ash hanging in the air like a curtain over the city. Lena Carter walked slowly along cracked pavement, her shoes crunching glass, her breaths uneven. Her body ached from the night before, but her mind carried sharper wounds. She thought of the voices that had doubted her, the ones who told her she was too quiet, too weak, never enough. She clenched her jaw and whispered, "They will not write my ending for me." Ethan Park joined her side, his tone softer now. "No one will hand you strength, Lena. You carve it yourself." His blunt words cut deep, yet his presence kept her moving. She lifted her gaze to the ruined skyline, finding in its brokenness a mirror of her own. Each step forward felt defiant, each inhale a refusal to collapse. The rubble was not her prison, it was her forge. Inside a gutted office building, dust fell like rain from fractured beams. Lena Carter traced her fingers across a broken desk, remembering the years spent unseen, the voices that laughed at her silence. "All my life I've lived in their shadows," she whispered, her voice trembling. Ethan Park leaned against the wall, eyes sharp, arms crossed. "Then stop standing in them," he said. The words pierced her, not as comfort but as a demand. She stood straighter, the sting of his truth heavy, but necessary. Her reflection in shattered glass looked foreign, soot-stained, weary, yet alive. She inhaled deeply, refusing to turn away from the broken image. For the first time, she wondered if those fractures could be the beginning of her strength. The day wore on, the city alive with the sound of sirens and despair. Lena Carter moved through alleys, her eyes catching the worn faces of strangers, each carrying silent battles. She felt their pain echo her own, yet none of them stopped moving forward. A child clutched a broken toy, an old woman carried water with trembling arms, men cleared rubble with bloodied hands. She whispered, "If they can endure, so can I." Ethan Park walked behind her, watching quietly, allowing her to draw strength from what she saw. It was not the fire that gave her resolve, but the people who refused to be destroyed. With every passing moment, the seed of resistance inside her grew, watered by the resilience of others. Night returned, the fires burning lower but the silence deeper. Lena Carter stood on a rooftop, looking out across the scarred city. Her heart pounded with the weight of what lay ahead. Yet for the first time, she felt clarity. "This chaos will not define me," she said firmly. Ethan Park approached, his voice calm but edged with warning. "Then be ready, because the world will not stop testing you." She nodded, the faintest trace of a smile breaking through exhaustion. Below, the ruins whispered of suffering, but above, the stars glimmered faintly through smoke. For the first time in years, Lena felt both small and infinite. The night was not only an end, it was a beginning. The ruins whispered of broken promises as Lena Carter walked through the remains of her neighborhood, her steps uneven, her heart heavy. The streets were once filled with music, now only silence lived here. She pressed her palm against a scorched wall, feeling its warmth from fire long gone. Ethan Park followed, his voice echoing softly. "This place shaped you, Lena. Don't let it bury you." She closed her eyes, the scent of ash filling her lungs. Her voice broke. "All I ever wanted was to be seen, and now all they see is my failure." His eyes narrowed, sharp but steady. Failure is nothing more than unfinished strength. She opened her eyes, and in the shattered glass on the ground, her reflection looked unfamiliar, both fragile and fierce. She stepped forward, forcing her body to move, though every muscle screamed. Each step was a defiance, each breath a rebellion. The past weighed on her shoulders, but she whispered, "Then let me carry it into fire. I will not disappear." As night deepened, Lena and Ethan reached the collapsed bridge that once connected the city's heart. She stared at the jagged steel, twisted and broken, a mirror of her own fractured hope. Ethan's words cut the silence. Bridges break, but paths can still be built. She shivered under the cold wind, her arms wrapping around herself. "Everything I've built, it falls apart," she whispered. Ethan's reply was low, harsh yet steady. "Then build again, and this time make it unbreakable." She closed her eyes, remembering the people who had dismissed her, the weight of their judgments pressing on her chest. Slowly, she placed her hand on the cold steel beam, its edge biting into her skin, grounding her in pain and presence. The night was unforgiving, but she refused to retreat. The broken bridge was no longer an end. It was a test. The city's center was alive with chaos as scattered survivors argued over scraps of food. Lena Carter stood still, observing the desperation around her. Her heart ached, but she saw in their eyes the same hunger she carried, a hunger to endure. A young boy cried for bread. A woman clutched her baby close. Men shouted angrily, their voices sharp as broken glass. Ethan Park whispered beside her, "This is what despair looks like when hope dies." Lena shook her head, her voice trembling but fierce. "No, this is what it looks like before hope is born again." She stepped forward, her voice breaking through the noise as she told the crowd, "We are not broken, we are bruised, and bruises heal." Faces turned toward her, their rage softening with her words. For the first time, she did not hide her voice. She spoke, and the world listened. Later that evening, Lena sat by the remains of a fountain, its water gone, its stone cracked. She stared into its emptiness, her reflection barely visible in a thin pool at the base. Ethan approached slowly, his tone softer than before. "You're finding your voice, Lena." She didn't look up, her hand tracing the edge of the broken stone. "It scares me," she admitted. "I've hidden so long that standing feels like falling." Ethan crouched beside her, his blunt reply steady, "Fall if you must, but fall forward." She let out a shaky laugh, the first in days, though tears lingered in her eyes. The night air was cold, but for the first time, she did not feel entirely alone. She whispered into the silence, "Then I will fall forward until I learn to stand unshaken." The city lay quiet as dawn began to rise, smoke drifting gently as the sky turned pale gold. Lena Carter stood on the edge of an overlook, her body weary but her spirit shifting. She breathed deeply, the air still carrying ash yet tinged with renewal. Ethan Park joined her, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Every storm passes, Lena, but scars remain," he said. She nodded, her voice steady. "Scars remind us that we endured." The words felt heavy but liberating. She clenched her fists at her side, the morning light warming her tired face. For the first time, she felt that the silence of the city was not death, but possibility. She whispered into the wind, "Let them doubt me. I will rise louder than their silence." The sun broke fully, casting her in gold, as if the world itself marked her defiance. The streets rumbled under the weight of unrest as survivors clashed in anger and fear. Lena Carter walked among them, her heart pounding, her body caught between the push of the crowd and the pull of her doubts. She saw fists raised, voices screaming, desperation thick as smoke. Ethan Park pushed closer, his hand brushing her shoulder as he said, "This is what chaos feeds on. Fear, hunger, rage." She clenched her teeth, whispering back, "Then we cannot give it what it wants." A bottle shattered near her feet, glass scattering like sparks across the ground. She steadied her breath, her voice low but firm. I will not let them tear each other apart. Stepping into the fray, her words cut against the roar, fragile yet piercing. We are more than this. We survive together, or we fall together. Faces turned toward her, some filled with fury, some softening into silence. The noise shifted, not ending, but bending. For the first time, Lena felt the tremor of power in her own voice. Later, in the shadow of a burned-out library, Lena Carter sat on the steps, her head bowed, listening to the faint crackle of fire nearby. Ethan Park leaned against a broken pillar, his eyes watching her carefully. You spoke and they listened, he said flatly. She shook her head, her voice fragile. They listened because they are desperate, not because I am strong. He leaned forward, his tone sharp. Strength isn't what you believe about yourself, Lena. It's what you give others when they have none. His words struck like iron, carving into her doubt. She raised her gaze to the darkened windows of the ruined building, imagining the books that once filled its walls. Knowledge turned to ash. She whispered, then maybe I can give them more than I believed I had. The thought was fragile, but it rooted itself inside her. For the first time, she let herself believe it could grow. The rain fell hard, washing ash from the streets, soaking through Lena's clothes as she moved steadily forward. The storm cut sharp against her skin, but she welcomed it as cleansing fire from the sky. Ethan Park followed close behind, his shoulders drenched, his voice rising over the storm. The world breaks us, Lena, but it also remakes us. She raised her chin, rain streaking down her face, whispering, then let it remake me stronger. A flash of lightning split the sky, illuminating the scars of the city in stark light. Her breath came ragged but resolute. The storm did not crush her, it baptized her. The voices of doubt still lingered in her head, but they were drowned by the thunder above and the steady beat of her own heart. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling it hammer, alive and fierce. I am still here, she murmured, as if telling the storm itself. At the edge of the city, Lena Carter found the old watchtower still standing, though cracked and leaning. She climbed its narrow steps, each creak echoing like a warning. Ethan Park stayed below, his voice drifting upward. Be careful, Lena. Not everything broken can carry your weight. She ignored him, pushing herself higher until she reached the top. The view stole her breath. Ruins stretched far, yet beyond them the faint line of dawn shimmered. She whispered into the wind, if this city can stand even in ruin, so can I. Her body trembled from exhaustion, but the fire inside burned steadier than before. She spread her arms against the wind, daring it to knock her down. She felt fear clawing at her ribs, but she did not shrink from it. For the first time, she welcomed it as proof she was alive. Darkness fell once more, heavy with silence, but Lena Carter did not cower. She sat beside a broken fire pit, the embers faint but warm against the night. Ethan Park crouched across from her, his eyes steady, his words sharp. Every step you've taken has led you here, Lena. What will you do with it? She stared at the ember glow, the faint sparks reflecting in her tired eyes. I will not be silent again, she whispered. Her voice felt different this time, less fragile, more like iron. Ethan nodded once, his expression unreadable, but a flicker of respect passed across his face. The night pressed close, but she no longer felt swallowed by it. The silence was no longer a prison. It was a stage, waiting for her voice. She looked at the sky above, stars faint behind smoke, and breathed deeply. This is only the beginning. The city trembled with another explosion, a shockwave rattling through Lena Carter's chest as she stumbled to the ground. Dust filled her lungs, choking her breath. Ethan Park pulled her up quickly, his grip tight, his words harsh. You cannot falter now, Lena. The storm is at its peak. She wiped blood from her lip, her voice breaking. I don't know if I can hold anymore. Ethan's eyes burned with urgency. You don't have to hold it, you endure it. That's the difference. Around them, Fires raged as towers collapsed in the distance, the noise deafening, the sky painted red with fury. She pressed her hand against her ribs, pain surging, but she refused to bow. Her whisper cut through the chaos, "If I fall here, everything ends." The ground shook again, and she rose shakily to her feet, trembling yet standing. Her fear roared inside her, but her resolve burned louder. They reached the underground tunnels, a maze of damp walls and shadows that smelled of rust and rot. Lena Carter's footsteps echoed, her heart racing as the darkness pressed close. Ethan Park lit a dim torch, the flickering glow casting long silhouettes across the dripping stone. "Down here the silence is louder," Ethan muttered. She shivered, gripping the wall, whispering, "It feels like the city's bones, broken and forgotten." The tunnels seemed endless, each step heavier than the last. She wanted to stop, to collapse into the shadows, but Ethan's voice pulled her forward, sharp but steady. "Keep moving. You've come too far to drown in the dark." Her breath trembled, yet she pressed on, whispering to herself, "Even shadows break when light finds them." Emerging from the tunnels, they found the square littered with rubble, survivors huddled in fear, their eyes wide and hollow. Lena Carter froze, overwhelmed by their despair. Children clung to mothers, men whispered prayers, the air heavy with hopelessness. Ethan Park looked at her, his tone sharp. "If you stop now, you prove them right. That silence wins." Her throat tightened, her old doubts clawing at her. But then, a child's cry broke the air, and something inside her snapped. She stepped forward, voice cracking at first, then steady. "We are still breathing. And if we breathe, we fight. If we fight, we live." Heads turned, their hopelessness faltering in the wake of her words. The crowd stirred, their fear trembling against the possibility of courage. For the first time, she was not only surviving, she was leading. Night pressed heavy as they gathered by a half-collapsed church, the shattered bell tower leaning like a wounded sentinel. Lena Carter leaned against the broken stone, her breath ragged, exhaustion clawing at her body. Ethan Park stood nearby, his tone harsh but low. "If you fall tonight, everything you've spoken will vanish." Her voice cracked. "I am not unbreakable, Ethan." He stepped closer, eyes fierce. "No one is. But broken steel can still cut. Do not forget that." She inhaled sharply, his words sinking deep. She closed her eyes, listening to the whispers of the survivors who now looked to her. Fear surged through her veins, but so did something else: responsibility. She opened her eyes, fire returning, whispering to herself, "I will not vanish." The breaking point arrived with the scream of sirens and the sudden collapse of the tower, stones crashing like thunder into the ground. Dust filled the air, survivors scattering in terror. Lena Carter stumbled, but did not fall. She stood tall amid the storm of ruin, her fists clenched, her heart beating like a drum. Ethan Park's voice cut sharp through the chaos. "Stand or be swallowed, Lena." She screamed back, her voice louder than the crumbling stone. "I will not be buried. Not tonight." Her words struck the air like a blade, silencing even the roar of the collapse. The dust began to settle, and the survivors turned to her, their eyes no longer hollow, but alive with a spark. For the first time, she felt the weight of her voice carry not just herself, but all of them. The night was heavy with smoke when whispers began spreading among the survivors, whispers that someone within had betrayed them. Lena Carter's chest tightened, doubt curling around her ribs like chains. Ethan Park's voice cut sharp. "You need to hear this truth, even if it breaks you." She turned to him, eyes burning. "What truth?" His expression was grim as he answered, "The collapse, the chaos, it wasn't chance. Someone fed them your name." Her breath caught, rage and fear mixing. Who would do this? Around her, eyes shifted uneasily. The ground beneath her seemed to vanish, her strength cracking. But she steadied herself, voice trembling yet firm. "Then I will face it, even if it's one of our own." For the first time, silence pressed heavier than the ruins, every gaze fixed on her, waiting for what she would do next. Lena Carter stood before the crowd, their murmurs sharp as blades, their eyes accusing. Her pulse hammered as Ethan Park spoke low, "If you waver, they'll consume you." She lifted her chin, her voice trembling at first but steadying. "I will not hide. If there is betrayal, it will not end me. It will reveal them." A man from the shadows shouted, his tone bitter, "You were never meant to lead us." The words pierced her, but instead of breaking, they fueled her fire. She stepped closer, her voice cutting through the noise. "I was never meant to be silent either." The crowd hushed, the accusation turning back on itself. And for the first time, she saw fear not in herself but in the faces of those who doubted her. The truth struck like lightning when Ethan Park revealed it. An old colleague, someone Lena once trusted, had given her name to those who hunted them. Her knees nearly buckled, betrayal slicing deeper than any wound. "He was one of us," she whispered, her voice breaking. Ethan's gaze was unflinching. He feared your voice would rise louder than his. The revelation shook her, but instead of collapsing, she stood taller, fury burning into resolve. If he thought betrayal would silence me, he was wrong. The survivors murmured, shocked by the reveal, yet drawn to her fire. She looked over them, heart pounding, and said, "Let betrayal be my weapon, not my chains." As the night deepened, Lena Carter confronted the man who betrayed them. He stood bound, eyes defiant yet trembling. She approached, her voice sharp. "You tried to bury me." His sneer faltered as she continued, "But I am not earth, I am fire." Ethan Park's voice carried from behind, steady as iron, "This is the test, Lena. Do not let hate consume you." Her hands shook, rage clawing at her chest, but she steadied her breath. She leaned closer, whispering so only he could hear, "You did not break me. You made me unshakable." His eyes widened, the power shifting entirely to her. She turned away, leaving him to his silence, and for the first time she felt taller than her pain. The air was thick with silence as Lena Carter returned to the survivors, their eyes fixed on her. She could still feel the sting of betrayal, but it no longer weakened her. Ethan Park stepped beside her, his tone steady. "Now they know you can't be broken." She looked out at the ruined city, her voice rising clear and unshaken. "They tried to take my name, my strength, my will. But tonight, I take it back." The survivors stirred, their fear shifting into something fiercer, belief. For the first time, she did not feel like an outsider in her own story. She felt like fire breathing into ashes. She whispered into the night, "This is not the end. This is the rising." The city roared with chaos as Lena Carter stood at the front of the survivors, the enemy pressing closer, shadows of soldiers moving through the smoke. Her breath came sharp, her body trembling, but her voice steady. "This is where we rise, or where we fall." Ethan Park's eyes locked on hers, his words blunt. "Then make them believe in you more than they fear them." Her chest burned with doubt, but she lifted her chin, her heart hammering. "I will not let silence bury us." The crowd stirred, their fear reshaping into resolve as she raised her fist. The noise of destruction thundered louder, but her voice cut through it. "We fight not because we are unbroken, but because we are still breathing." In that moment, her fear became fire. The enemy surged into the square, their weapons flashing in the glow of fire. Lena Carter felt her chest tighten, yet she stepped forward, her voice fierce. "You will not take what is left of us." The survivors rallied behind her, their cries echoing into the night. Ethan Park fought at her side, his movements sharp and precise, his tone raw. "Stand your ground, Lena. They will break before you do." The clash of steel and the roar of voices merged into thunder. She swung debris aside, pushing forward, her breath ragged, her will unshaken. Pain lanced through her arm, but she refused to stop, whispering through gritted teeth, "I am not finished." The fight grew brutal, ashen sparks raining as the ground trembled. Lena Carter staggered, blood streaking her face, but her eyes burned brighter than the flames. Ethan Park shielded her from a strike, his voice harsh but steady. "Do not falter now." She gasped, every bone screaming, yet her defiance louder than pain. "I will not bow." With a cry she drove forward, pushing the enemy back step by step. The square erupted with shouts, the survivors matching her fury. Every breath felt like her last, yet every strike declared she was still alive. She became the voice of their survival, her strength feeding theirs. The enemy leader appeared, cloaked in shadow, his voice deep and cutting. "You are nothing, Lena, just noise in the ruins." She froze, the weight of years of doubt echoing through his words. Ethan Park's voice thundered behind her, "Then show him what silence cannot bury." She lifted her chin, her voice breaking yet fierce. "I am not nothing. I am every voice you tried to crush." The square fell silent for a heartbeat as her words cut through the chaos. The leader sneered, but his stance faltered. Lena's body shook, but her spirit stood unbroken. She stepped forward, her voice carrying, "This ends now." The final clash thundered across the ruins, sparks flying as Lena Carter faced the enemy leader. Every strike shook her arms, every breath burned her lungs, but she refused to yield. Ethan Park shouted through the chaos, "End this, Lena." She roared, her voice raw, "I fight not for myself, but for all who were silenced." With a final surge, she forced him back, the crowd erupting in cries as the leader stumbled into the dust. Her knees nearly buckled, but she stood tall, her body broken, her spirit unyielding. The survivors' voices rose, no longer whispers of fear, but shouts of defiance. For the first time, Lena felt the storm break, not outside but within. The dust settled slowly over the ruined square, the fires dimming into faint embers. Lena Carter stood still, her chest rising and falling heavily, her body broken but her spirit burning bright. The survivors gathered around, their eyes no longer hollow but alive with hope. Ethan Park moved closer, his voice low yet steady. "You carried them through the storm, Lena." She looked at him, her voice soft but resolute. "I carried myself too. For the first time I chose not to vanish." The silence that followed was not fear, but reverence. The city was scarred, yet it breathed again, and so did she. The morning air carried the sound of hammers and voices as survivors began rebuilding what was lost. Lena Carter walked among them, her steps slow but filled with quiet pride. A child reached for her hand, and she grasped it firmly, her heart aching with tenderness. Ethan Park observed with folded arms, his expression softer than before. "They believe in you now," he said. She smiled faintly, whispering, "And for the first time I believe in me." The ruins no longer looked like graves, but foundations for something new. Her pain had not vanished, but it no longer ruled her. As the sun climbed higher, Lena Carter climbed a hill overlooking the city. She stopped at the top, her eyes sweeping across the scarred skyline. The ruins glistened in light, no longer symbols of despair but of endurance. Ethan Park joined her, his words carried by the breeze. "Scars are not endings, Lena. They are beginnings etched in skin." She exhaled slowly, her voice firm, "Then let these scars guide us." For the first time, the weight on her shoulders felt lighter, replaced with the strength of everything she had endured. The city breathed, and so did she. At dusk, the survivors gathered in the courtyard, torches burning as symbols of resilience. Lena Carter stood before them, her voice carrying across the silence. "We have been broken, but not destroyed. We will not return to shadows. We will rise louder than the silence that tried to consume us." The crowd erupted with cries of defiance, their strength united by her words. Ethan Park glanced at her, pride flickering in his eyes, though his expression remained sharp. For the first time she did not need his approval. She had found her own voice. Night returned, but it no longer carried only fear. Lena Carter stood on a rooftop, looking across the glowing embers of the city. The stars pierced the smoky sky, faint but unwavering. Ethan Park joined her silently, his presence steady. She whispered into the darkness, "I was overlooked, silenced, forgotten. But now I am unshakable." Her words hung in the air like a vow, carried by the wind across the city. The silence that followed was not emptiness but power. Her darkest hour had passed, and from it she had found her light.